Daniel Mercer's life appeared perfectly ordinary. A disciplined professional living in a quiet suburban neighborhood. He valued routine, order, and predictability. His days were carefully structured. Work, home, small social interactions, and quiet reflection. Neighbors admired his consistency, colleagues relied on his focus, and friends trusted his discretion. But beneath this calm exterior, subtle manipulations were already taking root, unseen and unchallenged. In the coming months, the stability of Daniel's life would be shattered by a betrayal so calculated that survival itself became uncertain. Laura Finch entered Daniel's life like a professional ally, intelligent, poised, and persuasive. Every gesture and conversation was deliberate, earning his trust while subtly probing his personal and financial life. To Daniel, she was simply impressive, competent, and trustworthy. But behind the charm was a carefully calculated observation, an assessment of habits, weaknesses, and access. Each meeting planted seeds of influence that would later become the foundation for a betrayal meticulously planned over months and years. Laura's influence grew gradually, masked as concern and guidance. She advised Daniel on estate planning, investments, and trust structures, each suggestion reinforcing dependency. Every signature he placed, every adjustment he made, strengthened her control over his life and assets. Daniel never questioned her motives. To him, it was partnership. Yet each seemingly benign recommendation was a carefully measured step toward consolidating power, ensuring that when the time came, the ultimate betrayal could occur with absolute precision. Daniel's world slowly contracted as he withdrew from friends and family, believing it was for efficiency and focus. Laura subtly encouraged this retreat, framing social distance as necessity for productivity. Every declined invitation and unanswered call quietly removed him from external support. What appeared to be normal adult prioritization was actually an engineered isolation, a preparatory step to leave Daniel vulnerable, alone, and increasingly dependent on the person orchestrating his future imprisonment. What began as a supposed trust exercise was anything but innocent. Framed as an intellectual and psychological challenge, Laura convinced Daniel that participation was voluntary and temporary. She painted it as a test of discipline, resilience, and loyalty. He agreed, believing it to be a benign demonstration of mutual trust. Yet, unbeknownst to him, this exercise was the blueprint for his imminent confinement. A meticulously planned betrayal disguised as preparation, the first step into a nightmare from which escape seemed impossible. The coffin was engineered for precision, reinforced to ensure both survival and concealment. Every measurement, every joint, every inch was calculated to sustain life for a limited time, yet confine movement completely. To an observer, it was a simple wooden box. To Daniel, it would become a prison designed to inflict terror and isolation. This object, constructed with meticulous care, represented the intersection of human ingenuity and deliberate malice, and it would soon become the stage for the most extraordinary test of endurance ever recorded. The chosen burial site was isolated, abandoned, and seemingly unremarkable. Above it, nothing hinted at the horror hidden below. Laura and Hale selected it for its seclusion, ensuring no regular traffic, surveillance, or curiosity would threaten the operation. Beneath the earth, Daniel would be confined for 61 days. Above ground, the field appeared ordinary, but every inch of disturbed soil had been deliberately concealed. This silent, unnoticed landscape would serve as the setting for a crime defined by patience, deception, and extreme cruelty. Inside the coffin, Daniel's world was reduced to inches. The air was thin, the space restrictive, and the light dim. Every breath was deliberate, every movement calculated to conserve energy and avoid injury. Water was rationed, food minimal, and time became an abstract concept measured by the slow drip of condensation and the beat of his own heart. Each day underground was a test of endurance, resilience, and human will, a psychological crucible engineered by those he had once trusted completely. Above ground, Laura maintained an impeccable facade of concern. She contacted police, attorneys, and neighbors, projecting grief and urgency while orchestrating financial transfers and legal maneuvers. Every call, every document, Every signature was calculated to reinforce the illusion of normalcy and conceal the reality below. Her composure was part of the crime, a carefully cultivated image designed to prevent suspicion while advancing her control over Daniel's assets and life. She appeared empathetic, but in truth, she was executing a plan with relentless precision. To the outside world, Daniel had simply vanished. His car remained, untouched, his presence erased from daily routines. Friends speculated, co-workers assumed illness, and neighbors quietly accepted his absence. Meanwhile, Laura's narrative of medical crisis, temporary disappearance, and responsible oversight went largely unquestioned. The meticulous orchestration of perception ensured that no immediate alarm was raised, allowing Daniel's confinement to continue undetected. The deeper the deception, the longer the world remained blind to the horror unfolding beneath its feet. Each day underground, Daniel Mercer faced a world stripped of light, air, and hope. The confined space allowed barely any movement, and every breath became a deliberate act of survival. Water had to be rationed carefully, each drop considered a lifeline. Condensation from the coffin walls became a crucial resource. He learned to collect it with improvised cloths, knowing dehydration would end him long before hunger. The protein bars provided minimal sustenance, forcing him to slow metabolism and conserve energy. Days blurred into nights, measured only by internal rhythms, and each moment brought the growing awareness that above, the world was unaware of his suffering. Mental fortitude became as vital as physical endurance. He recited memories, mathematical formulas, and fragments of poetry to maintain sanity. Fear transformed into calculated focus, despair into strategy, and the coffin became both prison and classroom, a place where human will was tested against darkness, isolation, and the betrayal of someone he had loved and trusted most. Above ground, Laura Finch moved with precision and patience, a puppet master orchestrating every detail of Daniel's disappearance. She managed bank transfers incrementally, adjusted insurance policies, and revised beneficiary designations, each action subtle enough to avoid raising suspicion, yet powerful enough to consolidate control. She contacted attorneys under the pretense of Daniel's medical absence, ensuring that every legal action appeared routine. Her calm demeanor projected competence and concern, masking the calculated manipulation that was underway. She monitored Hale's work, ensuring the burial and confinement were proceeding according to plan, while simultaneously maintaining the appearance of a grieving partner. Every move was deliberate, and every decision reinforced her dominance over a life hidden beneath the soil. This duality, compassion above ground, cruelty below, defined her strategy. It was not just a crime of confinement but a crime of perception, deception, and meticulous long-term planning, showing how human ambition, when unrestrained by morality, can become methodical and terrifyingly effective. The survival of Daniel Mercer depended on a delicate balance of air, water, and ingenuity. The ventilation tube provided barely enough oxygen to sustain life, while each movement within the coffin had to be executed with caution to avoid injury or suffocation. The water supply, meager and rationed with strict precision, demanded constant attention. Miscalculations could have resulted in dehydration within days. Condensation on the walls became a source of survival, yet it was insufficient to provide long-term relief. Inside the wooden coffin, time became a fluid concept measured by heartbeat, breath, and dwindling resources. Daniel's mind sharpened under extreme duress, turning fear into problem-solving and isolation into strategy. He devised small routines to preserve energy, regulated breathing to cope with thin air, and found ways to mentally track the passing days. In this claustrophobic environment, life and death were separated by inches of wood and a fragile tube, while above ground, the orchestrators of his confinement continued with impunity, confident in the concealment they had meticulously engineered. Laura Finch coordinated with Gregory Hale with precision that bordered on obsession. Every instruction was detailed. The exact depth of burial, the placement of ventilation, timing of water delivery, and contingency plans in case of discovery. The conversation was clinical, stripped of empathy, focused entirely on execution. Hale followed instructions meticulously, relying on Laura's guidance while ensuring the physical implementation of the plan remained flawless. For Laura, this was an exercise in control, a demonstration of her ability to manipulate both people and systems. Each day, she ensured that Daniel remained isolated, while simultaneously reinforcing the public narrative of his temporary absence. She balanced operational oversight with the projection of concern, creating a dual reality. A man struggling for life underground, and a wife appearing compassionate above. Every word spoken in that office was a further tightening of the invisible chains that bound Daniel, demonstrating how psychological and logistical orchestration could combine into a crime of extraordinary precision. Confined in total darkness, Daniel developed mental strategies to survive the psychological torment of his imprisonment. He marked each day with precise scratches on the coffin walls, counting and recounting time to maintain orientation. Memories became a vital anchor, conversations with loved ones, poetry he once enjoyed, calculations and problem-solving exercises kept his mind active. Each thought was deliberate, a shield against the overwhelming despair of being buried alive. He rationed energy and managed fear by turning it into focus, meticulously planning every movement to avoid injury. Even as physical strength waned and dehydration threatened, his mind remained a domain he could control. The human brain, in extreme conditions, became both sanctuary and tool, allowing Daniel to transform horror into a calculated exercise in survival. He was trapped, yet his ingenuity became a lifeline, a testament to the resilience of human will against unimaginable circumstances. Laura's financial maneuvers were subtle, incremental, and nearly invisible to outsiders. She transferred assets gradually, consolidated accounts, and adjusted beneficiary designations, all while framing her actions as routine oversight during Daniel's absence. Each transaction was calculated to avoid triggering alarms from banks, accountants, or family members. She maintained careful records, anticipating potential scrutiny, yet her ultimate goal was absolute control. The psychology behind her actions was as important as the mechanics, creating an appearance of legitimate concern and responsible management while systematically erasing Daniel's autonomy. This manipulation of perception and finance exemplified the modern complexity of crime. Legal tools, human trust, and social norms exploited with precision. Even as Daniel fought for survival beneath the earth, Laura was rewriting the reality above, ensuring that when he finally emerged, much of his life had already been irrevocably altered. When investigators finally turned their attention to the burial site, they entered a landscape designed to deceive. Every inch of soil had been manipulated to mask disturbances, yet subtle clues remained. Uneven compaction, faint depressions, and traces of recent excavation. Officers used careful measurements, soil analysis, and forensic techniques to map the underground space. Each discovery, small and seemingly insignificant, became critical in reconstructing the timeline of Daniel's confinement. The investigation highlighted the intersection of human deception and scientific rigor. Above ground, the field appeared mundane, yet beneath it, a man's life had been suspended between survival and death. This painstaking reconstruction of events, combining forensic evidence and witness testimony, would ultimately expose the methodical cruelty that had placed Daniel in the coffin for over 2 months. When Daniel finally emerged, the physical toll of 61 days underground was apparent. He was emaciated, dehydrated, and weak, yet alive. Every movement required effort. Even standing upright challenged his depleted muscles. His skin bore marks from constant contact with the wooden walls, and minor infections hinted at the fragility of human endurance. Despite this, his eyes reflected sharp mental awareness, resilience, and determination. Survival had required not only careful rationing but extraordinary psychological strength. Above ground, the contrast between his fragile body and his powerful will was stark. Investigators recognized that his ability to endure such extreme conditions was unprecedented, a testament to human adaptability and the mind's capacity to transform fear and isolation into strategies for survival. Each scar, each mark on his body, told a story of suffering, courage, and extraordinary endurance that would become central to understanding the crime itself. Every piece of evidence collected was crucial to unraveling the meticulous planning behind Daniel's confinement. Forensic teams documented fingerprints on water containers and coffin surfaces, collected soil samples to trace the exact placement and depth of the burial, and preserved the wooden coffin as a crime scene. Legal documents and financial records were cross-referenced to verify patterns of manipulation and intent. The investigators faced a challenge that spanned physical, psychological, and financial dimensions. Each detail exposed the deliberate orchestration by Laura Finch and her accomplice, illustrating how an ordinary landscape and seemingly mundane documents had been weaponized. Every trace, every fingerprint, and every soil sample became part of a larger narrative. A story of deception, betrayal, and extraordinary resilience against a crime that had been executed with ruthless precision, demonstrating the interplay of human psychology, legal manipulation, and forensic science. The trial of Laura Finch was unlike any the court had previously seen. Every detail, from courtroom demeanor to the presentation of evidence, was scrutinized with painstaking precision. Laura maintained a calm, composed exterior, projecting the image of a wronged wife, while prosecutors meticulously presented the extraordinary depth of her planning. Financial manipulations, communications with her accomplice, and evidence of premeditation formed an overwhelming case of calculated betrayal. Testimonies recounted the psychological torment Daniel endured, the physical limitations of his survival, and the complexity of the orchestrated concealment. The courtroom became a theater where human ambition, greed, and deception were displayed in stark contrast to resilience, endurance, and justice. Each piece of evidence told a story of patience and cruelty, while Daniel's testimony provided chilling insight into the lived horror of being buried alive. The case challenged conventional legal frameworks, illustrating how carefully concealed intent can transform ordinary tools, trust, legal documents, and social perception into instruments of crime. When Daniel Mercer took the stand, the courtroom fell into a tense silence. His account was detailed, precise, and harrowing. He described the cramped coffin, the rationed water and food, the condensation he collected to survive, and the psychological strategies he employed to maintain focus and sanity. Each day underground became a measure of ingenuity, courage, and endurance. He spoke of fear transformed into calculation, despair into structured routines, and total isolation into a mental battlefield where survival was the only objective. His testimony illuminated the deliberate orchestration of the crime, the planning, manipulation, and execution carried out by someone he trusted implicitly. Jurors were confronted not just with a story of physical endurance, but with the human capacity for deception, control, and cruelty. Daniel's words turned abstract evidence into a visceral experience, bringing the audience face to face with the magnitude of the betrayal and the extraordinary resilience required to overcome it. His survival became the central pillar of justice, proof that even the most meticulously executed crimes can be exposed and confronted. The display of forensic evidence in the courtroom was chilling in its detail. Every fingerprint, soil sample, and photograph of the coffin corroborated Daniel's testimony, exposing the depth of the deception. Investigators explained how minute traces of DNA linked the operation to Laura Finch and Gregory Hale, how soil composition confirmed precise burial techniques, and how water containers and ventilation tubes reflected careful planning rather than improvisation. The prosecution emphasized the contrast between the visible above-ground narrative, Laura's composed public image, and the invisible underground reality of a man fighting for his life. Each piece of evidence told a story of patience, precision, and premeditation, transforming abstract accusations into tangible proof. The courtroom witnessed the intersection of psychological manipulation, forensic science, and human resilience, demonstrating that even meticulously hidden crimes leave traces for those trained to interpret them. The evidence revealed not only the mechanics of confinement but the orchestrated cruelty and long-term planning that elevated this crime beyond ordinary comprehension. The media quickly latched onto the Daniel Mercer case, portraying it as one of the most extraordinary survival stories of modern times. News outlets highlighted the unusual nature of the crime, a man buried alive for 61 days, and the audacity of the orchestration above ground. Journalists analyzed the psychological and financial dimensions, exploring how trust and legal tools had been weaponized. Public fascination grew as every revelation emerged. The precise construction of the coffin, the careful rationing of food and water, and the coordinated manipulation by Laura Finch. Analysts debated the societal implications of such deception, drawing attention to vulnerability in domestic, financial, and legal relationships. The coverage amplified public outrage, empathy for Daniel, and disbelief at the extent of premeditation. It also reinforced the importance of vigilance in everyday life, illustrating how ordinary appearances and mundane routines can mask extraordinary crimes, and how human resilience can prevail even under the most extreme circumstances. The moment of conviction brought both relief and reflection. Laura Finch was found guilty on multiple counts, including kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder, and financial fraud. The jury acknowledged the extraordinary planning, patience, and cruelty involved in the crime. Sentencing was severe. Decades in prison to ensure that justice would endure, while Gregory Hale received a lighter sentence recognizing his role as an operative under Laura's direction. Daniel's ordeal had exposed not only the physical endurance required to survive underground, but also the psychological fortitude needed to confront betrayal, deception, and manipulation. The courtroom bore witness to the consequences of meticulously calculated crime and the power of human resilience. The case became a precedent in legal, psychological, and forensic circles, demonstrating the interplay between trust, power, and survival, and underscoring the capacity of justice to address crimes that blur the line between legal authority and malevolent intent. Daniel Mercer's survival became a testament to the extraordinary power of human will. 61 days underground had tested the limits of endurance, resilience, and ingenuity, but he emerged alive, carrying the scars of betrayal and the proof of criminal intent. His ordeal illuminated the dangers of misplaced trust, the subtle weaponization of legal tools, and the psychological manipulation that can lurk behind charm and composure. Above ground, Laura Finch's conviction provided justice, yet Daniel's journey also revealed a deeper truth. Survival is not only physical but mental, requiring the capacity to endure fear, isolation, and despair while maintaining clarity and determination. Society was reminded that evil can be patient, precise, and invisible, yet human courage, intelligence, and resilience can confront even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes. Daniel's story, harrowing yet inspiring, stands as a lasting reflection on betrayal, endurance, and the ultimate triumph of truth and justice.